This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. Most any contemporary musical style can trace its roots back to the blues. Time Signatures explores the blues and its musical connections with captivating interviews, lively discussions, and news from the world of the blues.
You know I'm crying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Baby, I'm home.
Well, thank you so much, Parker, and welcome to Time Signatures. I'm your host, Jim Ervin, and we're pleased to welcome another young Michigan musician to the program today. He's incredibly gifted, but he's also extremely down to earth. He's been involved with the music industry in one form or fashion for over 30 years. Now, that's pretty cool when you consider he just turned 34 a few days ago. But it was a chance meeting and presentation by Michigan's #1 bluesman, Larry McCray, that altered the path of this young man's life. The rest, as they say, well, it's history, and we're going to talk about that meeting with Larry and lots more. Rhett Yocom, welcome to Time Signatures, man, and may I say it's about time.
It is about time, and thanks a ton for having me on.
I'm really honored to finally get a chance to have you on. Now, for those that don't remember, or maybe you do remember, Rhett kind of did a cameo appearance on the second interview with Larry McCray that I did, the second part, and he happened to be in the house when I called over that time, and it was funny because we were talking about Rhett, and I was telling Larry what a great guy he was, and of course, so he had to bring him on, and it was the rest, it was kind of cool. But I want to dive in here, man, because there's a lot of ground to cover. I want to talk about your earliest musical memory. Talk about that for a minute.
So I'm going to say the earliest musical memory would be, dancing in grandparents' kitchen to the clock radio, and then playing accordion. Grandpa playing accordion along to some records, and
nice.
Learning to play a little bit of accordion, and then later on piano.
Very cool. What kind of music was that he was playing?
Mainly polka.
Okay.
Lots of polka, and a little bit of Floyd Kramer, who was like a honky-tonk instrumentalist.
Oh, yeah. Now, did you have any favorite bands or any songs that are recurring in your memory as you were growing up?
The most that I knew that existed back then was like the Everly Brothers, Fats Domino, and 90s country, I'm going to say.
Okay.
Maybe the Highwaymen. I think my grandma was a fan of the Highwaymen, and my other grandma played guitar, and they used to yodel. They'd go yodeling down in Yocum, Texas.
Wow.
So that was kind of the, I guess, the start of things.
Okay. Now, I wanted to talk to you about your start in music. Where did it begin for you?
I began picking up the accordion when I was 3-4 years old. I think somebody had brought back a little button concertina, and then again, Grandpa listening to the records, stuff like that. And then I think around 8 years old, I had piano lessons for 2 years. And then that kind of, Grandpa got sick, fell by the wayside, and I kind of stopped playing a little bit around that time. But it was always based around keyboard style instruments.
Okay. Well, I want you to fast forward, if you will, to that spring day in 2004, Rhett. I want you to take your time and tell me about that first meeting with Larry McCray. What were the circumstances and what happened that day?
So we had showed up in our band room classroom, and my band director, Mr. Eric Joslin, said, you guys can put your instruments back in the cases, and the whole class basically cheered because, we don't have to play today. Cool. And then, nobody practiced, so we liked being in band, but we didn't, at the same time, it was interesting. Everybody didn't want to work that day, and it was well received. But So they brought Larry up to the conductor's podium, and it was just him and an acoustic guitar. And up to that point, the only things that I knew existed were the Everly Brothers, Fats Domino. Maybe I was touching on Chuck Berry at that time. I don't quite remember, but
Sure.
And then of course the things that we played in band class, classical music and 90s country. That was maybe a touch of Motown off of the radio, off and on, but I didn't pay any attention to that stuff. But so Larry started in, talking to us a little bit, and then started playing, and absolutely blew me out of the water. I was floored that there was this type of music. I'm like, what? I've never heard this before in my life, and it just kind of just flipped a little bit of a switch. But so then later, after he got done playing and class had ended, it was time to go to lunch. And for those kids that wanted to talk to him a little bit, he was entertaining them. And he'd ask every kid, what's your name? What grade are you in? What instrument you play? And so by the time I got up to him to shake his hand and talk to him a little bit, I readily volunteered that information. And he was a little surprised that it just kind of rolled off my tongue there. And I think I talked to him, told him I'd give anything to do what he did or something along the lines of that. And then I went away to lunch, and then after lunch, we gathered in the high school auditorium for a show. And again, I was incredibly floored that a band one could make that amount of noise, because it was loud. And then back in the day, Larry was really loud, and I really enjoyed that part. But anyway, I was floored that a band could make that much noise and do it so well, and it was just such a well-oiled machine. And just again, I was so just taken aback that type of music existed, that that I was hearing something different for the first time, and
Sure.
I was getting to see it done in person as opposed to on a recording. And that was just, it was just something special. And so that was kind of how the blues first came to be in my mind, I guess.
Okay.
So,
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so from there, I, at the end of it, Larry gave away a guitar and a bass, and he said, hey, we're gonna give these away through a drawing or something of that nature. And as I left school that day, my band director asked, hey, do you want your name in here? And part of me always thought that maybe it was because I was always banging on the pianos in the practice rooms. I said sure, and away I went. I went home, went to sleep, didn't think any more of it. And then the next morning, woke up, went to school. First hour was physical education, so I missed the morning announcements. And a friend of mine, or acquaintance of mine, walking past me in the hallway, I still remember walking out of gym class, and then he's like, hey, congratulations. For what? And I remember being a little bit miffed, because I thought he was kind of being smart about it, that, oh, congratulations, you completely sucked in PE today. But how would he know that? Anyway, so
Right.
I'm like, for what? And he's like, well, for getting that guitar. I'm like, well, how do you know that I wanted that? And so I went, and my next hour was band, so I ran in the band room, went up to the band director, and I'm like, hey, somebody said I got a guitar. He's like, yeah. The other person, Sarah Lalone, the girl that played upright bass in band class, wanted the bass. He's like, is that a problem? I said, no. So after class, next hour was lunch. So I spent my lunch, didn't eat that day. I spent my lunch in the one of the two practice rooms with the piano and the guitar. I read the instruction manual, because I had absolutely no idea how the thing worked. And I read the little booklet that it came with. and it told me what notes to tune it to. So I'm like, well, I pushed the E on the piano and I'll tune the E string to that. And I went through it, and then I started trying to figure it out, and
Wow.
just kind of snowballed
Yeah.
from there.
Now, do you still have that guitar?
It's in a very heavily modified version, but yes, it's
Okay,
still
but
around.
you still got it. That's
yeah.
cool. Did
Oh, yes,
Larry
it's
sign
still
it
here.
for you or anything?
No, he didn't sign that one. He signed my strap, but
Okay.
I have another one that he signed.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, was it at that point that you really decided you were going to chase the dream and become a musician?
No, I just knew that I had a guitar.
Okay.
So, if you want me to take you to the turning point, that'd be, kind of the first time I played.
Right, right. And speaking of that, now obviously you started down the path, building your repertoire and getting yourself established and whatnot. Talk about that first time on stage, man. How did it come together and what occurred that day?
So I started learning, of course, from my background, the only things that, I had memorized were some country music and stuff like that. So I started learning some Johnny Cash, and I think Walk the Line had come out around that time. And
Okay.
I decided to try out for the FFA talent competition. So we went down to Lansing, and I tried out. Didn't know if I made it on the list to get in to play. So we went back to our hotel because we had to leave to go to the hotel, and then we were coming back that night for the convention. So we came back, and I grabbed my guitar out of the hotel room just in case. And we came back, and our bus parked, and I stepped off the bus, and there was a guy in a suit standing there, and he's like, "Are you Rhett Yocum?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Come with me." So he basically parted the seas, or, parted the crowds of people, rushed
Sure.
me backstage, and he said, "You have 5 minutes. Get yourself ready.
Oh,
You're
man.
you're on in 5." I'm like, okay. So the sound guy came up to me. He asked me, "Hey, what do you need?" And I'm like, a microphone for the guitar and a microphone for me. He's like, okay. And after the last act, or the fourth act, I think it was 5 acts, and I was the last one. After the fourth act got done, I was on, and just a 14-year-old kid, 14 or 15. I have a pamphlet somewhere, but anyway, I think it was 14-year-old kid walked out on stage with an acoustic guitar, and there were 2,500 people looking back at me.
Wow.
And
2,500 people.
2,500 people, still second largest show I think I've ever played. But
Man.
for a first time, that was kind of daunting. And I remember standing
I can
there.
imagine.
Yeah, it was, I still get goosebumps from it. You can't see them, but I still get goosebumps from it. And
Yeah.
I just kind of did the whole, "Hello, I'm Rhett Yocum," and it was just deathly silent. And I started into the first few notes of Folsom Prison Blues. And I watched, I witnessed the power of music. I mean, this is a blues podcast, but I'm talking about, Folsom Prison Blues. But everybody starts somewhere. So this one starts with the place transformed from just 2,500 heads in an audience to an absolute prison riot. People were dancing in the aisles, and I didn't have to worry about keeping time with myself because the crowd did it for me.
Wow.
It seemed like there might as well have been 30,000 people clapping along with me, because that's what it felt like.
Wow.
But just absolutely changed the whole perspective on, hey, this might be something. And then after that, I think I was famous on the MSU campus for 3 days. I probably signed a couple hundred autographs, and it just completely changed the entire world for me. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you're watching and listening to Time Signatures. I'm your host, Jim Ervin, and our guest this evening, or this today, is Rhett Yocum. Rhett had a chance meeting with Larry McCray back in 2004, and he's kind of walking us through the path that he's taken from that point forward. Now, looking back at those early days, Rhett, I have to ask, what stands out to you most of the lessons that you had learned about music?
There's a couple of them. Early days, I'm going to say, I'll tell you this, my favorite story of lesson in humility when I went to the Blue Goose in St. Clair Shores and met a bass player by the name of James Cloyd Jr. and sat in with him for a set, and he took me to school and then back again. And so, I'd been playing, I think I played 100 shows up to that point that year. And then I walked in there thinking that I'm like, oh, I got this made in the shade. She's in the bag. And then completely found out that no, I did not. And so I still do one of his songs, and I like to tell that story on stage. A lot of people that have come to see me play probably are familiar with that story. Some of my friends that were there would laugh at that because if they knew James Cloyd Jr., they would laugh at that and be like, "Oh, yeah."
Wow.
One other thing I did want to say though is that a year after I played, or a year after I got the guitar, was when the FFA thing happened, and then a couple of months later, Larry came back to the school, and I sat in. I thought was going to be for one song, but he had me set in for an entire set, and I did happen to dig out. I don't know if anybody can see it, but I did happen to dig out a picture.
Very cool.
Of back
Very
then.
cool. Wow. Now, I've seen you on stage with Larry a couple of times over the past few years, but have you ever had an opportunity to share the stage with some other musicians of note outside of the gentleman over at the Blue Goose?
Most notable, open for Thornetta, open for, of course, Larry quite a few times. Frank Bang has been gracious enough to have me sit in, I think, every single time he's come back to Bay City. Because he is another one that my school had brought in when I think I was a junior in high school. They brought his band in, and he had my band play 2 songs. I think we played Johnny Be Good and Yellow Leadbetter by Pearl Jam. But anyway, so I've known Frank just about as long as I've known Larry, and that was one of my favorite people to sit in with. And Frank's been a pretty good teacher from a distance of good music.
Oh yeah.
Shared the stage with, more local people like Scotty Vandell, Drew Pentkowski, Eric Ryden, Jeff Grossel, people that have been around the area a long time. I'm talking like Bay City, Saginaw area.
Yep. Now, I have to ask you, when you're up there on stage getting down with the blues, man, and, you're up there with Thornetta or you're up there with Larry, do you ever find yourself having a pinch me moment as you're standing there watching stuff go down and watching them play?
I'm going to say I have that moment every show, just about every show. The bigger ones, it's a little bit more apparent to me, but every time that I get to do that, I really think it's something special. Whether there's 5 people sitting out there not paying attention, or if there's 1,000 people or 2,500 or 3,000. Every single one of those is a pinch me moment, because that's where I'm me. Everywhere else, I don't feel like myself, but that's where I'm at. That's home.
You become alive on stage is what you're saying.
Basically.
Yeah. So definitely an entertainer. No question about that. Now, I've also been reading that you've been dabbling around with some work on amplifiers. Talk about that for a minute.
Well, real quick, I do retro amps is the name that I go by. Larry called me retro once or twice, and so I kind of ran with retro amps because retro, old school, but my name's Rhett, and
Sure.
kind of a funny play on retro. But I do a lot of that.
Spelled Rhett, is it spelled R-H-E-T-T Row?
Yes, R-H-E-T-T-R-O.
Okay, very
Just
cool.
kind of a funny thing, but
Okay.
I like to do. I've built a few for myself, and then done a couple for Larry. His Blues Junior is something that is almost entirely custom.
Wow.
As far as things that I've done on the inside, it is not stock at all. A lot of hand wiring went into that one. I've done stuff for Drew Penkowski and Scott Vandell and a couple other folks. I have Blues, Larry's son's amp behind me. They just I just picked that up the other day.
Okay. So you picked that up after after your appearance up there at the Blues Fest?
Yeah, a couple days after that.
Okay. Yeah, we had a
Yeah.
chance to see him play, and anybody that has not seen Blue Otis play yet, we had an opportunity to see Blue Otis and Larry on the stage at the same time. I actually have photos of it. I have video of it, and it was really cool. I can't remember the name of the song that he used for the encore, but it was one whale of a jam, and him and his son just tore it up, man. And
Thanks.
it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. But
Blues is a heck of a powerhouse.
Oh yeah, yeah, and to
Just
see him
monster.
play with his dad, I mean, he does pretty darn good for a 23-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how young he was till his dad was talking to me about him, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
I know he's young because I saw him sit in on drums at the Tawas Blues Festival back
Okay.
when I want to say I was 18 or 19. So I know that he's young because
Yeah.
I saw him. I think they said he was 8 or 10 when he sat in on drums. I just thought
Man.
that was funny.
Yeah, and Steven was backing him on drums that night, his uncle Steven. And
Yeah.
man, when Larry called him up there and they started doing that song, and I wish I could remember the name of it, something about you or something like that. I can't remember what it is, but anyway, great song. And him and his dad just tore it up it was probably 10 minutes, every bit of 10 minutes. And of course, we got to see Larry's new version of Soul Shine, which I don't know if you've seen him do this yet, but wow.
A really, really good version. I think it updated the song. Not that it needed updating. I think that song's special to an absolute just ton of people. And
it is. Yeah.
Coming out with that version kind of brings it to the forefront again. And maybe some of Larry's new listeners will go, "Oh, I really like this song." And then they'll find out that, "Oh, hey, it was done really long time ago. And, oh, it was different." And I think it'll be a good thing for him to bring forward.
Well, I think the thing that I liked most about it, and I'll be honest with you, I was sitting out there skeptical as all hell, thinking, "No, man, don't mess with that song. That's a standard. You can't play with that." Larry put his own stamp on it. He really did, because you always hear that version, the normal version that everybody plays. And I mean, I know that Larry recorded it first, 3, 4, 5 years before Warren Haynes did, and Allman Brothers. We've got Freddie Cunningham over here with the Root Doctor Band that does it. I know there's a couple of other bands that do it, and it's always done the same way. But this is a little quicker tempo, and I really liked it. It was a good, fresh sound. So I actually messaged him after the Blues Fest last weekend, and I said, "You need to put that on your next album as it is. I'm telling you. I would love to hear that on a CD on a regular basis. I really would." So
I think I would listen to it quite regularly.
Back to you. Yeah, absolutely. I think we ought to twist his arm a little bit behind the scenes. What do you think? And nobody out there is going to tell him. Trust me, nobody's going to get out there and say, "Hey, Larry, Erv's talking this and Rhett's talking that." We'll just quietly do it between us and we'll get it done. That's the goal. So I wanted to ask you, speaking of music, though, how about you? Have you got any CDs out there, or you got any plans to do some? What's going on there?
So I have one album out there that you can find on Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff, but you can also buy it, I think, through Amazon, if they still have any, or directly through me. But have one album that I did in 2018. We went to Chicago because I'm like, oh, I got to record an album. Where am I going to do it? Oh, Chicago would be really cool because I love Chicago blues. And drummer at the time, Scott Causley, his son was interning at Mystery Street Studios. And so we went there, knocked out 7 songs in 9 hours.
Wow.
And I did it while I had a case of food poisoning the night before. And I was haggard. I was tired. And we still got to knock out quite a few songs in that short period of time and then drove home. And since then put out a couple singles that we went back and did there 2019, maybe. I think it was
nice.
Yeah, I think it was late 2018 or early 2019. We went back and did those. Yeah, I think it was the spring of 2019 we did those and put that stuff out. And then my friend Jeff and I have been working on recording some more music because I need to put more out there.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, indeed. Well, listen, Rhett, if I wanted to hear your music, if I want to book you for a gig, where am I going to go to do this? This is your chance to shine and tell people where to go.
So I'm working on a website. Hopefully have that up and running by the end, in a little while here. And then you can find it. Most of the contact info on Facebook, I check that pretty regularly. That's where most of the larger places go to book me anyway. Or if, somebody has my phone number, then I guess that's where you can get my phone number from. But
very good. Very good. Rhett Yocum, it has indeed been an honor and a privilege, and thank you so much for taking time and joining us today on Time Signature, sir.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, sir. That wraps up this edition of Time Signatures. Again, our thanks to Rhett Yocum. Glad he was here today. But also to you, our friends, our fans, our followers, people that love this program and our subscribers. Without you, none of this would be possible. Jim Ervin reminding you that keeping the blues alive is everyone's responsibility, but preserving the history of the blues one story at a time, that's my mission. Until next time, so long.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lccconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.